Good morning, Title I coordinators. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Erin Suddeth, and I'm the Title I Part A branch manager at KDE. I have a colleague with me today, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm David Malonte, one of the assistant directors in the Division of School and Program Improvement.
So I do want to extend a welcome to all of our new district coordinators. I've gotten quite a few notifications in the last couple weeks that we have some people transitioning into new roles. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. These webinars are just one of the technical assistance resources that we provide to our districts. We do these every month, almost always the last Thursday of the month at 10 o'clock. And at the end of the PowerPoint, you'll see the schedule for the rest of 2022. If at any time you have any questions or comments, you can put those in the chat if you want to, if you're joining us on Teams. If you're watching through the KDE Media Portal, you can send those to me in an email at erin.suddeth@education.ky.gov. And as always, we do record these webinars and we post them on our Title I Documents and Resources page, and they stay up there for a year. So you can always go back and reference those when you need to. We'll start with a recap from our June webinar. We talked about the FY 2023 consolidated application opening. We looked at effective program documentation and communicating program requirements with principals. Make sure you're muting yourself as you join. I'm hearing kind of an echo. We also talked about the Title I admin subscription that KDE is providing for our districts for this upcoming school year, and we'll talk about that again today. And finally, updating Person Role Manager to make sure that your Title I coordinator contact is up to date there. So if you missed last month's webinar, I definitely recommend that you watch that recording, particularly that information on effective program documentation. That's going to be really handy for you to have at the start of the school year. And then if your district is selected for monitoring, you'll be really glad that you watched that one. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about a couple little changes that we had to our Title I handbook, just some more reminders about our GMAP application. I'm also going to talk about some common application issues that might prevent your application from being approved, so hopefully you can address those ahead of time. The big focus, I think, today is going to be on the correct reporting of enrollment and low income data in the GMAP application. And then, as always, we have some various reminders. I do have one right now. It's not on our slide. We are getting ready to start our second round of ESSA fund monitoring. So we have notified 14 districts that were selected for this monitoring. It's going to take place in the fall. And I will send a follow-up email to everyone that has the monitoring forms just as a reference. It's always good to take a look at those monitoring checklists, whether it's for ESSA or consolidated monitoring, even if you're not selected, just so you can kind of keep in mind the types of documentation that you should be maintaining. So first, just an overview of the couple of handbook updates we have, and then we have some specifics on the next slide. So we made a minor addition. It's in the Title I Part A Program Requirements section. That's on page 7 of the handbook. And specifically, it's item 11, which is staff paid with Title I Part A funds. That's a new item. And what this does, it clarifies some information about Title I paid staff assuming limited duties that do not meet the intent of purpose and purpose of Title I based on identified needs. So we did have this information previously in the handbook. It was in the paraeducator section and really only focused on paraeducators, but actually it does apply to any staff who are paid fully or partially from Title I Part A. And we will look at the specific language that went in there on the next slide. We did also make another update. We updated our guidance on district set-aside document, which exists as its own document on our webpage, and it's also included within our handbook in the appendix. And these revisions were just based on the revisions to the school-based decision-making SBDM authority that resulted from Senate Bill 1 during this last legislative session. So this slide contains the specific wording from that revised portion of the handbook. So Title I paid staff, and when I say Title I paid staff, I'm talking about teachers, paraeducators, instructional facilitators, resource specialists, guidance counselors, parent involvement liaisons, other staff maybe as appropriate, any of these staff who have been hired to address student needs that have been identified in the needs assessment. Sorry about that. So these Title I paid staff may assume limited duties that don't meet the intent of and purpose of Title I based on needs. And so hereafter, we're just going to call those non-Title I duties, or duties that do not benefit participating children that are assigned to similar personnel. This can be done provided that the time your Title I paid staff are spending on these duties is the same proportion as staff not being paid from Title I. So it applies to Title I paid staff at the district level, as well as school-wide programs and targeted assistance programs. Title I staff in a program supported with Title I funds may assume limited non-Title I duties that are assigned to staff in a program not supported with Title I funds. And assigning an amount of non-Title I duties to Title I staff that's not proportionate would not meet the intent of the Title I Part A program. And remember, when you have staff who are being paid with Title I funds, you do need to keep proper time and effort documentation for those. There is a time and effort section in our handbook with specifics about maintaining a time and effort reporting procedures, as well as the actual documentation that you would need to maintain for those staff members. Just a couple reminders about our GMAP application process. So I already mentioned fiscal year 2023 consolidated application is open in GMAP. It is due August 31st, so you still have about a month to get that in. I have been checking to kind of see how people have been doing with submitting those applications. We have quite a few who have not even started yet, so I definitely encourage you to make sure that you are doing that. So some reminders about our applications. We do review those in the order in which they are submitted. Sometimes people like to submit their application and then immediately email their consultant and ask if we've reviewed it yet. Please remember that each consultant does have a number of districts assigned to them, so they're reviewing quite a few applications. When submitted, the application has to be reviewed by all applicable programs before it can be returned to the district. So Title I, II, III, IV, whichever of those grants you receive, every program has to sign off before it's returned to you. We, as just Title I, don't have the ability to go in and send your application back to you. If your application is returned as not approved, be sure that you take a look at the feedback that's been left in the consolidated checklist. That's where all of the different KDE program consultants, that is where all of the consultants go in and put feedback on the specific parts of your application, things that you need to do to address any issues in order for your application to be approved. And be sure to check applications from previous years to ensure that they are consultant approved. It is really easy once the new one opens to kind of forget that you have maybe some old ones that still need attention, whether that's in Title I or another program. So just go in there and give that a double check. And as just a general reminder regarding the due date, adherence to deadlines for things like applications, comparability reports, things like that, those are factors in our monitoring risk assessment. So your consultant may be reaching out here in the next week or two if you haven't started your application or haven't made a lot of progress, just to see if you need any help to help you meet that deadline. And don't forget that we do have a GMAP training video series that has a video for each page of the application. It walks you through completing it. That's on our Documents and Resources webpage, so you can always take a look at that. Okay, next we'll talk about some common application issues that we see that often prevent us from approving applications. The first one is insufficient or missing narratives. So we have several pages that have questions requiring narratives, like the Introduction District Requirements page, District Set-Asides, Services to Private Schools, as well as the Budget page. So you want to be sure that you are carefully reading all the components of the question or the prompt to ensure that you've provided all of the required information. Sometimes some issues that we see is that a portion of the question has been left unanswered, or when it comes to the budget page, some of the budget narratives may not contain enough detail to determine allowability or approvability. And we focused on that in our April webinar. We talked about some of the codes such as field trips, furniture, things like that, where we might need a little bit of additional detail just to make sure that it is an approvable purchase. Another very common issue is the equitable services packet. Sometimes we have issues where that packet has not been uploaded into the district document library. That packet should be completed for every participating private school. It needs to be uploaded in the district document library. The information that's in that packet should align with what you've put in the private school page in GMAP. The other issue we sometimes see with that packet is that it's not complete. Maybe some questions are missing, or it doesn't have the signatures. So you just want to make sure that you upload the entire completed, signed, and dated packet. Okay, this is kind of an interesting one. Sometimes we have unnecessary information that's provided in our applications. So we have a couple of questions that should only be answered in certain situations. Specifically, this is the Introduction to District Requirements page, that very first page. Questions 6 and 7, those were some of the new questions that we added last year. Those two questions are not applicable to districts not utilizing Title I funds to support the programs. For example, there's one about the gifted and talented students. If you are not using Title I funds for gifted and talented students, then you're just going to put NA for that question. Same thing for the other program listed there. Question 5 is also was also a new question last year, and it does say that it may not be applicable to all districts. Question 5 is talking about transition preparation activities for incoming kindergarten students. So if your district is serving schools with Title I funds, schools that have kindergartens, then you do need to answer that question, which is pretty much all of our districts. So don't leave that one blank. Let's see. Additionally, this was a really exciting change I think everybody was glad about last year. That school personnel and program description page. Remember now that program description field is only required for schools operating targeted assistance programs. You don't have to fill that out for your school-wide programs. And the final common application issue that we see is misalignment between the pages. So we have information being provided on one page of the application that needs to align with information on the other pages. And we're going to look at a couple of specific examples on the next slide. So the first one is going to be personnel. So the focus here is headcount and full-time equivalency, or FTE, of staff. So for example, the district set-aside page, you may have indicated that you're going to pay some staff at the district level, such as the coordinator, or maybe a part-time bookkeeper or something. Those staff need to be documented on the following page, which is the personnel details district-wide page. If the school personnel and program description page indicates that there's staff being paid at the school level, then when we go over to the budget page, we should see that the appropriate staffing budget codes have been used and funds have been allocated for that purpose. The school program description page can have some of its own issues. So the selections that you make on this page impact selections made on several of the other pages throughout the application. The poverty determination and method of qualification, those selections impact the low income data entered on and program service selection entered on the school eligibility page. And we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into that in just a minute. The method of allocation of funds that you select on the school program description page determines how funds are going to be distributed to schools on the PPA page, as that selection impacts rank and serve requirements. So for example, if a district has opted to allocate funds based on grade span rank, then the PPA page should reflect that. There is information available on the GMAP Help for Current page, which is in that left-hand navigation menu of every single page of the application. It's also available in the training videos, and it has a very thorough breakdown of these pages. So definitely take a look at those resources, especially if you are new to this role and to GMAP. The budget page can have some of its own common issues as well. So sometimes we see the amounts that have been budgeted for parent and family engagement or private school services do not align with the amounts listed on the district set aside page or the private school page. Those amounts should match. Additionally, the amount budgeted for homeless services, everybody has to reserve funds to help students experiencing homelessness at Title I and non-Title I schools. You make that reservation on the district set aside page. We should see that also on the budget page and make sure that those match. Some of our districts do opt to break their budget down by location and assign things to each school as opposed to just doing everything assigned to the district. If you have done that, then our consultants should be able to filter the budget by each school and match the total to the total that's on the PPA page. So now we are going to take a closer look at that school program description page and the school eligibility page, how they work together, particularly in regards to the low income measure. This is something that we have seen come up several times during monitoring recently, and you'll see in the following slides, it can have a pretty serious impact on your application. So Section 1113A of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, requires the district to rank all of its school attendance areas according to the percentage of public school children from low-income families. Districts are required to use the same method of poverty to identify, rank, and serve eligible school attendance areas. So the districts identify how they're going to determine poverty and low income on the school program description page in GMAP. So the first thing that you do on that page is you select the low income measure. Could be free and reduced price lunch, direct certification, temporary assistance for needy families eligibility, or Medicaid. And we're going to focus on the free and reduced price lunch and direct certification because those are the ones that are used most commonly by our districts. So then the other thing that you're going to do is you're going to enter a date that the data was collected on that page. And typically this is a date from the previous school year that school was in session. There have been some flexibilities in the past few years because of COVID-19 and its impact on the accuracy of data. So you may have seen in a recent Monday message from the commissioner that for this year's application, FY 2023, districts may use data from 2019-20, 2020-21, or 2021-22 for this purpose. So the same low income measure must be used for all schools unless the district has some schools that participate in the Community Eligibility Provision or CEP program and some schools that do not participate in CEP. In this instance, the district can select two different poverty measures, but they need to be comparable. So districts that are serving CEP and non-CEP schools have the following options for ranking and serving schools. Option 1, they can use direct certification data for all of their schools. Option 2, they can use free and reduced price lunch data for their non-CEP schools, and they can use direct certification data and the 1.6 multiplier for their CEP schools. And then the last option, they can use direct certification and the 1.6 multiplier for all of their schools. Now you'll notice that using direct certification without the multiplier and free and reduced price lunch is not included in this list of options. That's because those measures are not comparable. And part 5 of the GMAP training video series provides an in-depth explanation of each of these low-income measures. So when we talk about the data that we need, this enrollment and low income data, it comes from the Free and Reduced Application Management Report or the FRAM report in Infinite Campus. So what districts do is they run these FRAM reports for whatever date they've indicated on the school program description page, and then they use those reports to enter the enrollment and low income data on the school eligibility page. Now, the low income number that is being used is going to depend on the low income measure selected by the district. Did you select free and reduced price lunch? Or did you select direct certification? Do you have a mix of both? And as I mentioned, this is an issue that we've encountered recently during some of our desk and consolidated monitoring reviews. So we're going to look at how to read the FRAM report. So the FRAM report summarizes the meal eligibility numbers for each school, and it can be run for any particular day. The top of the report includes the name and address of the school, which of course I've redacted for this presentation. It's also got a timestamp of when the report was generated, the day that the report represents, the grade spans represented, and the name of the school. Now, the day listed at the top of this page should match the date provided on the GMAP school program description page. So this screenshot says that I'm using a report from April 30th, 2021. That means that when I look in GMAP on the school program description page, the date I should see there is April 30th, 2021. Now the rows are broken down into two sections. Up at the top we have direct source, and then towards the bottom we have non-direct source. Direct source is the same as direct certification. So there are 4 columns representing the total number of students receiving free lunch, the total number for reduced lunch, total number for paid lunch, and then a overall total for each row. And then totals for each column, of course, are at the bottom of the page. It's important to note that the report does not provide subtitles for direct certification and non-direct certification. It also does not provide a subtotal for free and reduced price lunch. So you may have to do just a little bit of math. So we're going to break down how to read this report. First thing that we're going to do is locate the total enrollment number. That's at the bottom right hand of the chart. So for this school, the total enrollment is 389. Next, we're going to determine the number of low-income students, and first we're going to base that on direct certification. Direct certification refers to students who are eligible for free meals who are not subject to verification. So some examples, some students may be eligible through programs such as SNAP or TANF, maybe some other factors such as students experiencing homelessness, migrant youth, etc. So on the FRAM report, direct certification, as I said, is listed in this direct source section. And according to this report, this school has 93 students eligible through Medicaid, 252 through SNAP, and 2 through TANF. So we add those up and we get a total of 347. We are not going to include the 8 students listed below being eligible for free and reduced price lunch based on family income, because that is not a form of direct certification. So if we use the direct certification, we can divide 347, the number of direct certification students, by 389, the total enrollment, and we get a poverty percentage of 89.2%. So now let's look at that free and reduced price lunch total. Free and reduced price lunch includes any students eligible for free or reduced price lunch. So we're going to add the total at the bottom of the free column, which is 355, and the 5 at the bottom of the reduced column for a total of 360 students. So if we were using free and reduced price lunch to determine the school's poverty percentage, we would get 92.54. So those, let me click back on that for a minute. Those are fairly close percentages, 89 and 92. Roughly a 3% difference, which may not seem like a very big deal. So we're going to take a look at another example where the impact is more pronounced. So in the first example, the difference between the number of direct certification and free and reduced price lunch was only 13. In this example, the difference is 79 students, which is more significant. So direct certification on this one, we've got 202 students identified. The total enrollment is 614. So that brings us to a poverty percentage of 32.89. Whereas if we use free and reduced price lunch, we have 281 students who are eligible, same enrollment, 614, for a poverty percentage of 45.77. So that's a pretty big difference. That's the difference between a school that's eligible to operate a school-wide program because it's over 40%, the school using free and reduced price lunch, and a school that would need a waiver to operate a school-wide program. That would be the one using the direct certification option. So let's consider per pupil amounts. For serving schools below 35%, that triggers something called the 125% rule. That sets a minimum PPA that the district has to use at all of its schools. So let's imagine that this school has a PPA of $500. For the direct certification school, that school is going to get a total allocation of $101,000. For the free and reduced price lunch school, that would be an allocation of $140,500. Again, that's a very big difference. So by now you can see how important the accuracy of this data is, how using the incorrect data can kind of cause a domino effect that impacts so many other sections of the application. The incorrect poverty percentages for individual schools, as well as the grade span and district-wide poverty averages could be impacted. If the district determines service qualification based on their district-wide or grade span poverty average, this could affect whether or not the schools being served are in fact eligible. We could also run into an issue of schools being served out of rank order. As I mentioned on the previous slide, we could have a situation where maybe the 125% rule should have been used, but it wasn't. And finally, this could provide inaccurate data for federal reporting. So there's a lot of issues there. Okay, so I can already see a question in the chat, so let me pull it up. Okay, whoa. I see several questions, okay. So I have an odd situation where in the upcoming school year, there's a change in school enrollment because the grade level configuration is going to change. So one school is going to lose a grade level and another will gain an entire grade level. Both are Title I schools. Okay.
So I think the solution there, Erin, is for the initial year, they're going to have to do some hand counting of students, figure out who's going to and from, and make notes on their reports, you know, so they have some documentation of that's the process they use to count kids to and from.
Yeah, we had that come up, I think just yesterday. So make sure that when you take the time to do all of those calculations, you do save that. Don't just throw that paper away, because if you're selected for monitoring, we would want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, and be able to explain that, you know,
yeah,
as we come out to question if we're monitoring. And we run into that issue when districts reorganize or new schools open or schools close. So.
Okay, and Christina asked if I said 2019-20 regarding the date that you can use. Yes, 19-20, 2021, and 21-22. Any of those school years can be used for this coming year. Okay. Is it correct that in all scenarios we only use direct certification? No scenario includes, yeah. So there would not be a scenario in which you would only look at that direct certification data. It's either going to be direct certification or free and reduced price lunch, which is direct and the non-direct. Okay, and let me check the email really fast and see if anything's come in on email. Okay. I do not have any questions in the email, so we'll go ahead and look at a couple of our reminders. If you think of any questions later on, you can just send an email to me or your district's Title I consultant. So you probably saw this announcement in our July newsletter. We're really excited that we are offering a federal programs training opportunity for all of our districts, and this is at no cost. I know that I've referenced some information that I've learned at the different Brewstein and Manasavit trainings and presentations that I've attended. I've mentioned those on several webinars. So this training is going to take place September 20th through 22nd at Central Bank Center in Lexington. This is the same content being provided all 3 days, so you only need to attend one of those days. The training is provided by Brewstein and Manasavit. This is a legal firm that's nationally recognized for federal grants management and education, regulatory, and legislative practice. Some possible topics that might be at this training include legislative developments, program compliance topics such as timeliness of spending of funds, preparing for monitoring and audits, developing compliant internal controls, things of that nature. We encourage superintendents, finance officers, and federal programs coordinators to attend. Coordinators should have received an email about the training with a link to register. I sent that out a few weeks ago, and then I included it again in the email reminder about the webinar. I know a number of you have already registered, but we have so many new people. I wanted to make sure that it was on hand for them. If you have already registered, we've had some people asking, should I have gotten a confirmation email? What day am I going to be attending? Things like that. There's not a confirmation email that went out. We will be reaching out in the next few weeks, mid-August or so, to confirm the date that you've selected for attendance, let you know other information such as a specific time that the training is going to start. It is a full day training, as well as contacting those of you who have requested a hotel room. I've also heard from some people who maybe they initially registered and something has come up and they need to switch days. So what I've been having them do is just do the registration form again. And there's a comment section. Just in that comment section, say, I previously registered for this day, but I need to change to this other day. And that should not be any sort of issue. Okay, during the June webinar, we announced that KDE is providing every district with a subscription to Title I Admin for the 2022-23 school year. Districts are going to have access to this resource, which is an authoritative all-in-one hub for learning about and sharing important program components. The LRP Media Group is the group that handles Title I admin. So they have contacted districts regarding this opportunity. This contact should have come from Teresa Haar in the last few weeks, and it is regarding the license agreement and a staff access list for the district. So you have to complete those and return those to Teresa in order for you to get your district's login to Title I admin. I think I've sent a couple emails and reminded people, if you haven't been contacted by Teresa yet, first of all, be sure to check your junk email. It may have accidentally gone there. If you do that, you still can't find it, just let me know. I've been resubmitting email addresses to them on a regular basis. If you've contacted me this week, I think I sent them an update on Monday. I haven't sent them another one yet, so you don't have to email me again. I'm going to be sending them another update later today. Okay, our upcoming webinar dates. Our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, August 25th, as always at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And we do just want to remind you that we value your feedback. We always want to learn more about what you find helpful, the types of topics you'd like to see us including in webinars or newsletters. So if you have any comments or ideas or questions, you can submit those through our feedback survey. It's completely optional and it's anonymous. There's always a link to that survey in our Title I newsletter. And of course, you can always just email ideas to me or your consultant as well, and we'll make sure that we get those. We do have a question. What is Teresa's email? It is thar at LRP, I think it's lrp.com. might be like LRP group. I can't remember off the top of my head. All right, and I think that is all I have. If double check the email really quick to see if we have any other questions that have come in. All right, I don't see any questions in email or in the chat. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in August.